Imagine gasping for air with every step you take. Imagine collapsing and waking up in the ER only to find out COVID-19 attacked your nervous system. I believe the virus to be a hoax. I believe the mainstream media and the Democrats were using it to create panic, crash the economy, and destroy Trump's chances at reelection. My partner and I hosted Family Saturday, June 13th. I woke up sick Sunday. My father-in-law's mother got sick. We all tested positive for COVID-19. I'd love to take it back. I'd love to still have him and her here.
More than a dozen of Tony Green's family members contracted COVID-19 after a family gathering this summer. 2 of them have passed away.
I'd like to have the opportunity to go back and save others and take this whole thing much more seriously.
His family's loss is just one story of the more than 200,000 Americans who have lost their lives this year to COVID-19. The president himself has contracted the virus, only a month out from Election Day.
Breaking news that President Trump and the First Lady have tested positive for the coronavirus.
The president tweeting today about leaving Walter Reed, telling the American people, don't be afraid of COVID, don't let it dominate your life. It drew outrage from many who point out this country just today hit 210,000 lives lost.
But even as infections continue to rise, and in a world with both facts and misinformation, will the devastation of the pandemic actually have an influence on the election?
What was clear from even very early on in the pandemic was that there were differences in how Democrats and Republicans were seeing the pandemic and responding to it. Republicans were less likely to say that they felt personally threatened by the virus. They were less likely to support policy measures that sort of restricted various parts of our lives in response to the virus. And as things moved on, they were more likely to think that we'd gotten through the worst of it.
You know, as a spectator and a voter, you know, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, who do I want to believe? Well, I've seen how people, you know, from the opposition of President Trump have handled their suspicions or their politics or their beliefs about him in other areas, other subjects for the last 4 years. So, you know, I'm dismissive of that side because it's just been an all-out assault against him from the beginning. So I don't put a lot of credibility in what they say. I mean, this is the reason why so many people like me didn't trust the information that they were getting. We don't trust anybody anymore.
You're not going to be able to know the end of this election, in my opinion, for weeks, months, maybe never.
Don't pay any attention to what the president is saying.
We're in a moment of toxic politics where the only thing that the two sides seem to have in common is that the greatest enemy is the other side. We live in a world where if you're a liberal or a Democrat, you get one set of facts and one set of views. And if you're a Republican or a conservative, you get a very different set of facts and views. And in order to confront a pandemic, we really need a shared reality.
Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that, right? Coronavirus. Michigan is closed. All of these states that are closed, North Carolina is closed. These states that are closed are run by Democrats. And the reason they're closed is because we have an election on November 3rd.
The American people are looking for responsible leadership on COVID. They've shared sacrifice, missing weddings, funerals, family events, etc. They should expect the same responsibility coming from their president or presidential candidate.
Disasters are local, they're also political. And not just from the vantage point of how things can be politicized, but also just understanding that there has to take political will and investment to secure the actual funding and infrastructure and sustainability practices that will allow us to ride out a disaster, whether that's a hurricane or a pandemic. if you actually looked at the map of where the hotspots were, or the largest incidences of COVID and the highest fatality rates across the nation, what you tend to find is they weren't resisting the stay-at-home orders quite as much as the counties or even the states that were not as severely impacted. The sentiment essentially became, it's not happening to us, why are we being punished? And I think that's where the splintering really became worse.
When you're, I guess, polling people that are within your social media network, it seemed to me that no one had any of this virus or symptoms or anything. I mean, a few people had caught the flu, but, you know, I mean, the flu is the flu. People get it every year. So when it came to this coronavirus, you know, I'm thinking, okay, nobody has this. Nobody that I know has this. Is this somehow kind of made up, or is it the hyped up flu? My impression of the virus is it was politicized very early on by both parties.
It's my belief that the city of Atlanta still has the appropriate standing to mandate masks.
We shouldn't need a mask mandate for people to do the right thing.
I think it's a political hoax, and I am against the masks.
I just didn't see that it was reaching the magnitude of what everybody was suspecting it was going to be.
There's no way for us to process any political information in a joint way, because there's always a sense that our side has to win and the other side has to lose, that our side has to be right and the other side is wrong. Unless there's 100% shared agreement on the reality, which there is clearly not, anything is going to become a partisan issue.
I voted in every presidential election for the Republican candidate since 1976, including, reluctantly, Donald Trump. Big mistake. One of the worst mistakes in my life. And when the pandemic hit, I'm watching this and watching him abdicate his responsibilities, and I'm like, I cannot be part of this Republican Party anymore. People are dying.
I don't want to go so far as to say it's the president's fault.
Many doctors think it is extremely successful, the hydroxychloroquine. I happen to think it works in the early stages. I think frontline medical people believe that too, many.
You know, I look at the president and I say, there's a man that, you know, really wants the best for his country. Yeah, I don't have a doubt for that. Did he handle the coronavirus in a way that reflected in good leadership? In this instance, I would say his intentions didn't match his actions.
Even after the president contracted the virus, Tony's still supporting President Trump.
I worry about Joe Biden being in office, and I want a competent leader. I want an effective leader. And we know what we get out of Trump.
This is an individual who is not concerned about the health, safety, and well-being of the American people.
What we're voting for at this point is an entire system that needs to be able to prepare to give us the things that we will need in these times of strain. And I think from my vantage point, what I'm hoping is that by the time we get to the end of this year, we're going to be moving towards a COVID-19 recovery. We are still very much in the middle of a response. We need to be voting with a mindset of understanding all of the dynamics that are going to be critical for us to recover from this catastrophic event, and understanding that that is going to take collective solutions. No one president, no one mayor, no one councilman can do this by themselves.
Tony is still wrestling with the loss of his family members. He hopes others realize the severity of the pandemic.
It's emotional. You know, my concern is that people are still either denying or downplaying the virus, thinking that somehow it really is about the election. And for some it may be, but people's lives are at stake, including your own. I think that our country is on life support. And right or wrong, left or right, Republican or Democrat, we're all Americans. Take it seriously. It may cost you your life if you don't. It may cost someone else their life if you don't. And you may care about that person very much.